And we begin with breaking news this morning, where two police officers have been shot in Ferguson, Missouri, after protests turn violent there. We've learned that those officers are not Ferguson police officers. It happened early this morning after protesters gathered in the wake of the news that the department's embattled police chief plans to resign. Witnesses say cheers quickly gave way to angry chants of, quote, "racist cops have got to go." Then gunfire erupted. At least 4 to 5 shots were heard. Now 2 officers are in the hospital, one from St. Louis County, the other Webster Groves Police Department. Both, again, were just helping Ferguson officers monitor the protests there. Again, this is all in response to Ferguson Police Chief Thomas Jackson's announcement that he will resign. The city's mayor says Jackson and the city have agreed to part ways. The announcement comes after the DOJ report that showed alleged bias against black people in the city's police department and the court system there. The federal investigation sparked after the shooting death of unarmed black teen Michael Brown by white officer Darren Wilson. Wilson has since resigned. Word is the chief will resign come the 19th. In the meantime, Albuquerque still dealing with the aftermath of a controversial police shooting here. Several hours from now, a judge is scheduled to decide whether Bernalillo County's DA will prosecute the 2 police officers charged in the shooting death of James Boyd. News 13's Catherine Azone is in the Newsplex with the details. Good morning, Catherine.
Good morning, Crystal. Now, last Monday, a district court judge postponed the decision as to whether DA Kerry Brandenburg would prosecute the 2 cops in last year's shooting death of James Boyd. DA Brandenburg decided to move forward with murder charges for officers Keith Sandy and Dominique Perez for the shooting death of the homeless camper in the foothills. Yet attorneys for Sandy and Perez want Brandenburg to give the case to a different DA. They say there's a conflict of interest, citing APD's investigation into Brandenburg for allegedly bribing burglary victims to keep them from pressing charges against her son. But Brandenburg says there's no conflict and says her office can fairly handle the case. A judge was set to decide last week if Brandenburg could prosecute the case, but raised questions about the officers' attorneys. At one point, one attorney represented both officers, but now they each have their own. The judge wants to make sure there's no objection to that before moving forward with the hearing. Back to you, Crystal.
All right, thanks for that information, Catherine. Now, again, today's hearing is set for 9 o'clock this morning. If it does happen, we will be there. Here's a motive you don't hear every day. An Albuquerque man accused of shooting his ex-girlfriend told police his neighbor's dog told him to do it. 48-year-old Matthew Gonzalez told police he saw his ex update her relationship status to single on social media and got very angry. According to a criminal complaint, Gonzalez told police his neighbor's dog told him, quote, "You need to take care of this," end quote. After forcing her into the car, Gonzalez says she tried to get away. He says his hand was still on the gun when he reached for her and it discharged. Gonzalez is being held on a $150,000 bond. New this morning, a middle school student is facing some serious charges after deputies say he had a bomb in his backpack at school. Deputies say a student at Mesilla Valley Alternative Middle School in Las Cruces saw something suspicious in the 7th grade student's backpack yesterday. When school administrators searched, they found a pipe bomb that they say was strong enough to blow off someone's hand. Bomb technicians were able to dismantle it. The student is being charged with negligent use of an explosive. He's been put on short-term suspension for now. Also new this morning, overtime costs at the Santa Fe Police Department have gone up since a scheduling change instituted in August. Officers now work 4 10-hour shifts a week instead of the regular 5-day-a-week schedule. Here are the facts. According to the Santa Fe New Mexican, the change has increased overtime costs by 16%, costing more than $850,000. If you compare that with the same time period last year, it's more than a $100,000 increase. This morning, Lobo fans are wiping their tears away. One of the worst seasons in 8 years for Lobo men's basketball is over. The Lobos lost to Air Force in the first round of the Mountain West tournament in Las Vegas yesterday. The Falcons defeated the Lobos 68-61.
I can't believe it's over, and that's the thing. It's some mixed emotions right now. Obviously very disappointed about the loss, but at the same time back on, that was the last time that I pull on a Lobo jersey.
That was Hugh Greenwood. He's a senior this year. The Lobo women, though, are still in it. They played last night. News 13 Sports Director Van Tate is in Las Vegas. He has highlights from that game coming up in our next half hour at 6:41. The search continues this morning off the coast of Florida's Panhandle for a military helicopter and the bodies of several service members. The search continues for human remains, and pieces of wreckage have already washed ashore after the Black Hawk went down in dense fog Tuesday night during a training mission. 7 Marines, 4 soldiers were on board. A Pentagon official says all of them are now presumed dead. More fraternity fallout following a video that shows members participating in a racist chant. The university's president is now seeking further legal action as the protests continue.
Racism is taught! Racism is taught! Racism is taught!
Yesterday, protesters marched outside the home of Parker Rice, one of 2 students expelled. National leadership for Sigma Alpha Epsilon are now investigating. Meanwhile, the president of the University of Oklahoma is working with the Attorney General's office to see if that chant broke any laws. On campus, protesters taped the mouths of several statues. Dramatic surveillance video this morning shows a teen running down a sidewalk after abducting a toddler in broad daylight. The boy, who's almost 2, was playing in a Washington park with his 10-year-old brother and 8-year-old sister when the suspect scooped the boy out of his stroller. You can see the boy's sister run right after him here in the video. And then 2 other teens, they joined that chase. The kidnapper eventually put down the toddler and took off. Police say they caught him. They are not releasing his name, though, because he is only 15 years old. And we're continuing to follow some breaking news this morning out of Ferguson, Missouri. 2 police officers have been shot there. Video just into our newsroom where a massive manhunt is now underway. We've learned that those 2 officers are not Ferguson police officers. It happened early this morning after protesters gathered in the wake of the news that the department's embattled police chief plans to step down. Witnesses say cheers quickly gave way to angry chants of, quote, racist cops have got to go, and, quote, then gunfire erupted. At least 4 to 5 shots were fired. They could be heard. Again, the 2 officers who were shot are now in the hospital. Last word is just into the newsroom. They are in serious condition at this time. One from St. Louis County, the other Webster Groves Police Department. Both were helping Ferguson officers monitor that protest this morning. And again, this is all in response to Ferguson Police Chief Thomas Jackson's announcement that he will resign. The city's mayor says Jackson and the city have agreed to part ways. The announcement comes after the DOJ report that showed alleged bias against black people in the city's police department and even in the court system there. The federal investigation sparked after the shooting death of unarmed black teen Michael Brown by white officer Darren Wilson. Now, Wilson has since resigned. Word this morning is that the chief will resign on the 19th. In the meantime, Albuquerque is still dealing with the aftermath of a controversial police shooting here. In several hours, a judge is scheduled to decide whether Bernalillo County's DA will prosecute the pair of police officers charged in the shooting death of James Boyd. Last week, a district court judge postponed the decision after raising questions about the officers' attorneys. At one point, one attorney represented both Keith Sandy and Dominique Perez, but now they each have their own. The judge wanted to make sure there's no objection to that before moving forward with the hearing. DA Carrie Brandenburg charged both officers with murder for shooting and killing Boyd. Attorneys for the cops want a different DA, though, citing a conflict of interest there. Brandenburg disagrees and says her office can fairly handle this case. Again, that hearing is scheduled for 9 o'clock this morning. If it does happen, we will be there. We'll bring you the latest later on today. Happening overnight, Albuquerque police are investigating what led to a car crashing into a number of yards overnight. News 13's Catherine Mazzone spoke with neighbors about what happened in the early morning hours. Good morning, Catherine.
Good morning, Crystal. Now, police are still on scene this morning trying to get the car out of the yard. Neighbors we spoke to say it appears the cars were speeding when they crashed.
It appears that there was 2 vehicles racing going southbound on Chalwood Park, and they both lost control. One of them went through a cinder block wall and then exited out the other side of the cinder block wall, crashing into a Volkswagen camper van.
And we spoke to police this morning. They were called to the area of Indian School in Chalwood at about 2 o'clock. They tell us details surrounding the crash are still limited, but 2 cars did wreck and one of the cars flipped into a yard. 3 people, 2 men and a woman, were taken to the hospital for injuries. Police say they appeared to be drinking. They also tell us one of the cars may have been stolen. Neighbors say this happens all too often. In fact, they tell us it's about the 5th time homes have been damaged because of vehicles crashing. Neighbors say they talked to the city about making changes, and a study has been done. They say the city wants to put a median there, but neighbors don't think that will fix the problem.
We, as the neighborhood, have asked for a roundabout to try and deter or have these people have to swerve or contend with something, an obstacle in the road, which would have possibly prevented this.
Now, we haven't been able to talk to the city just yet about neighbors' concerns since this crash happened so early this morning. This is all what neighbors have told us. I will, however, be reaching out to city officials today and will let you know what they have to say. Crystal, back to you.
All right, thanks for that information, Catherine. No word on if any of those involved in the crash will face charges just yet. A 71-year-old woman wants to know why the MDC officer who punched her, knocking her to the ground and leaving her bruised, still has a job with the county this morning. Despite Juan Reyes's no contest plea to disorderly conduct charges for punching an elderly woman, he's still a corrections officer with MDC. The incident happened after a July MMA fight at the Crown Plaza when two feuding families got into it. Now, the woman and Reyes both admit to getting involved. Reyes told an APD officer that he did not intentionally punch the woman, the woman now tells us what he claims.
Yeah, well, he said he tripped, but he did not. He punched me directly and knocked me against the wall. I hit my head and I had big bruises.
So we asked why Reyes still has a job with the county. MDC says Reyes's plea deal means he technically does not have a guilty verdict. Officials cannot do anything about his employment under their current policies because of that. New MDC Chief Philip Greer says he wants to create policies that address off-duty behavior. APD says they have arrested one of 3 men accused of shooting at a man who tried to help a woman at the Valero gas station on Unser and McMahon. The men were whistling and catcalling at the woman. When a Good Samaritan confronted them, the suspects chased, then shot at him. APD says after we aired their pictures, they did get a tip and arrested 18-year-old Nicholas Chavez. The other 2, though, are still at large this morning. A day off for some APS kids is tossed out to make up for that snow day that shut down the district. The snow day meant parent-teacher conferences were canceled for elementary and middle school students. Those conferences will be made up before or after school in the next few weeks. However, high school students will have school next Thursday. That was a parent-teacher conference day. So what happens if there's another snow day?
So if we have another snow day, that's forbid. That's always have a 2-hour delay, no matter what. But if there is, the only other option would be then to come back after Memorial Day, correct?
Yeah, so the last day of school for now is scheduled for the Friday before Memorial Day. APS is still without a permanent superintendent this morning. Now the district is hoping for more time by extending the deadline. APS stopped accepting applications more than a week ago, but with new board members in place, they're looking at giving applicants more time and plan on discussing the pool come April. Superintendent Winston Brooks resigned last year because of an undisclosed personnel issue. Brad Winter has been serving as the interim superintendent. We're following up for you this morning. A move to stop kids from skipping school by taking away their driving privileges passes another hurdle to becoming law. The House passed the bill. It now heads to the Senate. If the Senate gives the green light, students who have 10 or more unexcused absences could have their licenses suspended or be denied from getting one in the first place. The feds are going after DirecTV for fraud this morning. The Federal Trade Commission says the company misled customers with its popular 12-month discount package. They say the company failed to make it clear that a 2-year contract is required. So if customers try to cancel, they're then hit with fees of up to $480. DirecTV denies the claims and says it plans to fight this charge. We have more information on our website about the lawsuit or the claims. Go to KRQE.com. 2 police officers are facing disciplinary action for getting into a fight at the police station. The Ohio police station fight between a patrolman and sergeant was over a dispute of how to handle a traffic stop. After the traffic stop, the sergeant seen here getting out of the cruiser called the patrolman over, but he reportedly refused, cursing at the sergeant. The sergeant came up behind him, spun him around. The sergeant is still on the job. The patrolman is on paid leave this morning.